Welcome to the final part of Taking Stock this evening. Wayne McCurry and Paul Theron are our guests. Let's look to a global picture. We've talked about South Africa's failures and successes in the global environment, but the global environment is tightening. It's a really interesting space to be right now. We're seeing the rise of populism and more recently the victory of a man called Boris Johnson, who was the London mayor, became the foreign secretary under Theresa May, was sent out into the wilderness and then swept to victory as the Conservative Party leader and thus became the Prime Minister of Britain. And he is preparing the United Kingdom potentially to leave the European Union on Halloween, 31st of October, without any kind of trade deals in place. His detractors say it's going to be a disaster. His supporters say that this is a messianic move by Boris Johnson. Is he the world's biggest genius? Is he going to surprise everybody as we see the pound slipping away against global currencies, including our own?
Look, I think it would have been better if he'd stayed in the wilderness. But the referendum committed the country to leaving by a slender majority. So maybe it is best that they just get it done and that if they can put an end to the uncertainty, I don't think it would ultimately be so bad. I think somehow or another they'll work out how to do the Irish border thing. And eventually, even if there is an economic hit, there'll be a rebound. I actually feel quite good about the global outlook because a lot of the things that have made us anxious in recent times have been Donald Trump's imaginings, his inventions, his war with China, his war with, people coming from Mexico. I think he's going to declare victory and stop doing all of those things in order to get re-elected next year. I think Donald Trump, when he lies awake at night,
tweeting,
wants only one thing in the world, and that is to be re-elected in 2020.
And to be loved. And to be adored. I mean, but
don't we all?
Well, speak for yourself. Some of us have that already. Wayne makes no comment. Watch him. You see, old dog, don't try and teach him new tricks. Are you as optimistic about the global environment? Last month on the show, Paul was saying inflation is dead.
It is dead.
The cycles are getting shorter. And even if we do hit a bump in the road and there is some market panic, these things are, because we've learned to manage them better over the last 100 years, things...
Look, I don't know about that because every new crisis is different to the past one because it is unexpected to a large extent. But inflation is very low and there's no signs of that going up. Interest rates are already low, so the ability to react to a crisis is relatively limited. But other than government debt, or government bonds, I don't see an imminent crisis because there's no imminent debt build-up anywhere.
But isn't the government debt problem the problem?
Yes, but it takes that can be sustained for a significantly longer time period than corporate debt or people debt or a global financial bubble or a dot-com crisis. It can just be sustained for longer. So the global economy is slowing down. It's quite clear that's why US interest rates are going to be cut. But equity markets might come back on the back of global growth slowing down, but I honestly can't see some crisis developing. But then again, can you ever see some crisis development? But just on Donald Trump, I agree with Paul. I think he's going to declare victory and retreat before the election. And it's quite interesting what Boris Johnson said. Because, Donald Trump said there's certain no-go areas in London. It's an unsafe place. Meanwhile, its murder rate is 1/25th of the murder rate in Los Angeles. But let's put it aside. Boris Johnson said he's also very scared. To him, there's also no-go areas in New York. And the reason why certain areas are no-go there is the chance of running into Donald Trump.
But yeah, the global environment, politically and socially feels brittle. But markets sustain. Markets are growing. In this last month, we've seen the S&P 500 hit new highs. The Dow hit new highs. What scares most people who look at graphs and things is they say it's never been this good for this long, so therefore it must end and end soon.
Yes.
But what else can you buy? You can't buy, global 10-year treasuries which offer you negative yield. That means you're going to get less money back later. There's no excitement in having money in the bank because interest rates are low. You've got to step out a little, and as a result, people are getting more attracted to international growth stories like your Googles and your Visas and your Apples. These global companies are the place to be. So the price to earnings ratios are clicking slightly higher. And as we all know, it's when you get a higher expanded price to earnings ratio when you really make money in markets. So Yes, there could be problems, but I think if you're selective about where you position yourself, you can continue to make good gains.
Paul likes global investment opportunities. Wayne?
I think there's opportunity locally, yeah, but understand that true crises are always brought on by an excess debt somewhere, some speculative bubble.
Dare I say ESCOM? You carry on.
Some speculative bubble somewhere, coupled by rising inflation and interest rates. So they're not around. In other words, the share market could fall. The world economy's growth rate could slow down. But we're not on the cusp, because of the inflation story, of a 40 to 50% equity market collapse. So the conditions aren't right for a true collapse. They can fall 10 or 15, 20%, because as you said, it's the longest expansion ever, and nothing carries on forever. But I truly can't see a catastrophe, an unmitigated catastrophe somewhere.
Wayne McCurry, thank you very much. Paul Theron, thank you very much. And thank you very much for watching us in our new time slot at 9:30 on a Thursday night here on ENCA. Have a very good evening. Good night.